All right, so maybe let's move on to some cards. I think we're just gonna sort of go around the table until we sort of run out of stuff to rant about. We maybe need some sort of like timeout buzzer when because there's a lot of cards and I feel like there's a lot to say about all of them. So we'll maybe just have to keep an eye on things.
We should probably preface some of this before we get into it, because the current situation with L5R I think is really, really good. I think the designers have done a really, really good job. We are going to, don't make that face, Justin. We're gonna get stuck into this, and we're gonna pick out a couple of cards, and we're gonna be like, this is complete rubbish. This is wrong. They should have done this. They should have done that. Like this is hindsight, and we are fully aware of it. I don't think any of us in our broadest imaginations would have been able to do as good a job as the designers and the playtesters have done on this so far. So, by all means, rant at us after we've had our own rants. But we do acknowledge that this is just a bit of fun, and we're not here to tell the designers that they've done a shit job and we're quitting the game because it sucks and we're going home to play with our ball.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I mean, yeah. I always say like criticizing other people's work is like just the easiest thing in the world. It's so much harder than actually doing good work yourself. So yeah, that said, Justin.
That said, I actually come from a design background. It's what I was trained in, and critiquing other people's work and having your own work critiqued is an essential part of the process. So there's always something learned. So I'm this whole thing about feeling emotionally delicate about your work and other people's work, as long as you treat it respectfully and approach it in a constructive manner, I don't see any problem with criticism whatsoever. It's part of developing critical faculties and developing just an improved understanding of how things work. So that goes both ways, of course, for us as well as the work we're critiquing. But so I'm just not squeamish about it. I've been ripped to shreds too many times in meetings before. So,
all right.
So there we go. Yeah.
All right, Justin, your name's at the top of the list. So do you want to get first choice?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Right. Well, I suppose we'll start with Crab. We'll start with Crab. Right. So the card on the top of my list for Crab, and this is for a solid nerfing, is Pathfinder's Blade. This is a card that arguably should not exist in any form in the game. I mean, it already did in the Cautious Scout, but the Cautious Scout is a 2-cost character which is vulnerable to assassination. It's a 2/0, so it has inbuilt restrictions.
Most attack by itself.
Yeah. There are a huge number of restrictions on a character that was already super good at 2 cost. And what Pathfinder's Blade does is take all the strengths and mitigate all the weaknesses, and just becomes one of the most potent counterspell effects in the game. It's a counterspell for provinces, and provinces are an essential resource. They start in play. You have access to them. They are an essential part of defending in the early part of the game. And Pathfinder's Blade simply allows you to set up a snowball condition and, just basically blow people's provinces down in rapid succession, especially in combination with Need and Master. So, I sat long and hard and tried to figure out how you would fix this card, or like how you would balance this card. At 1 fate, it's still too good. 1 fate really isn't enough. I don't know how to change the ability without adding about 10 more lines of text to it and making it so roundabout as to be effectively useless. This card, like the only way I can see to balance this card is to increase its fate cost to 2.
2.
And also, as Shinagabachi also points out in chat, this is not a restricted card. Why this is not a restricted card, I do not understand as well. But the counterspell effect is so potent and nullifies one of the core elements of the game. It needs to be much more expensive if you're going to play it. It needs to be a tactical. So it needs to be more than an automatic include. It has to be a card you think about. No, sorry. So restricted in 5 rings. Sorry, we've got a Bubba09 asking a 1-off per deck. No, restricted in 5 rings. So restricted attachments just means you can't have more than 2 restricted attachments attached to a character. So which doesn't sound like a big deal, but actually, if you're playing like dragon weapon decks, it's surprising how often it turns out to be a real pain in the ass. That when you're trying to build large kind of towers, that having restricted attachments really actually does limit what you can do.
As a brief aside, we need to do an article, breaking news, announcing the Alpha 4 restricted list, and just add all the restricted cards on it.
Yeah. So, as I said, I mean, at 1, I still think this card is an auto-include and just too powerful for what it does. At 2, at 2, it's just not good enough, but that's absolutely fine because an effect like this honestly should not really exist in the game. So as a
counterpoint, this is a counter to provinces. We have counters to events. We have counters to attachments. Why do provinces not get counters? And indeed, it's only the ones with triggers.
Well, because okay. Look, Okay, so here we go. Right, so you want to. So basically, the provinces with triggers are the best provinces. Provinces that don't have triggers, with the possible exception of Pilgrimage, are just really don't see that much play because they don't have an impact on the board. They're just not that effective by and large. I mean, you'll sometimes see Entrenched and Ancestral Lands under the Stronghold, but those are there for very specific reasons because the clan is already strong militarily or politically and is hedging against having to face an overwhelming military or political attack on its stronghold in an area that it's naturally weak in. So if you are if you are building your deck, you are going to go with provinces that have triggered abilities because those are the best. Those are the best provinces, and they give you the best chance to win in a general case against all opponents. Pathfinder's Blade is a card that is restricted to Seekers, so to the Seeker role. So only a few clans can play it. So that's adding in. So basically, what you're adding in is you're adding in a high degree of matchup variance there. This is a card that is not going to be available generally to the field. It's only going to be available to a few. So if you have to meta against this card, you are forced to include meta cards against a small fraction of the field, and that's just generally not a fantastic way to design games because deck space is already incredibly competitive in this game. And if you are forced to include cards that are overwhelmingly powerful but only run by a small element of the field, that is diluting your deck. And just basically and especially an effect like that's one element of it. Okay, yeah, there's a lot. The second part is that provinces, as I said, they're a key resource. They're one of they start in play. You start with resources in play. They are a key defensive resource. And a card like this completely shifts the balance of how the game operates. If I can negate your provinces and you cannot negate my provinces, I have just established a huge advantage. And because those resources start in play and are guaranteed available to both players in a game, the ability to negate a guaranteed resource is an overwhelmingly powerful ability. And, it's vastly undercosted in this case, vastly undercosted. So you've got the match. So, and in addition to this, this is a rabbit hole. Okay, in addition to this, you've got to take into account Dragon's province. But seriously, you've got to take into account Dragon's provinces versus other clans' provinces. Like Dragon arguably have the strongest province lineup in the game.
No doubt.
Yeah. Okay, so what you have is you now create a massive asymmetry in terms of someone going into Dragon can lose the game in all kinds of ways when they attack Dragon provinces, and Dragon basically get to ignore their opponent's provinces, which can set up a really, really powerful tempo play and an overwhelming tempo push. So if it boils down to the case where Dragon can attack with impunity and you get horribly punished every time you attack Dragon, that's a game you probably can never win, or at least your win percentage just goes off a cliff. And we saw that as well. We saw that in the test games. Like we saw the repeated need in Master Pathfinder's Blade.
Yeah.
So yeah, you had a case where Dragon were just attacking with impunity, blowing provinces away, and every time the opponent goes across the board, they get heavily punished. And that is just it's a terrible game dynamic, because it's the kind of game dynamic that just turns people off playing, because you're never in the game. Your choices don't matter. You get like attacking like face down provinces, attacking face down provinces. You know, that can be punishing enough in its own case. Like if you bump into the wrong province, if you bump into a restoration, if you bump into a shameful, if you bump into a feast or famine, you know, you can just lose the game instantly.
So would this card be improved if it was a neutral and not locked into a role?
Arguably, it would be. I'm not sure. Well, the card itself would not be better, but the card would be not as. It would be a marginally better design, but it wouldn't solve the core problem with the card, which is creating this huge asymmetry. Part of it may actually be that it's Seeker, because with Seekers you're going to have the best province lineup compared to Keepers, where you don't. Like Keepers are always going to have a slightly inferior lineup. And maybe this should be a Keeper card, so that the Keepers have a better shot against the Seeker province lineup. Arguably. Like I just think this card has so many problems with it, that it just shouldn't exist. It should be borderline unplayable, or shouldn't exist.
Okay.
So yeah, like I don't know what you could do to this card to make it a good card, to make it a well-designed, balanced card. I really don't.
Would it be better at 3 influence, or indeed crab only?
We can't play it.
Perfect.
Yeah. But the thing is that just kicks the can down the road, because then at some stage Crab do get a Seeker roll, and all of a sudden you've got Crab going, we ignore all your provinces. Here's the same problem, just in a different form. At which point it's going to be cards like Witch Hunter. It's going to be like the nut start is going to be Witch Hunter Pathfinder's Blade, where they start just bashing your provinces down left, right, and center, and there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. But yeah, as I said, for me, this card is it's awful. It shouldn't exist. It creates so many problems. It creates huge asymmetries. And again, like the answer to which you can't play around this card. You either draw an answer, which is a let go, or a calling in favors, or a Maya Mystic, God help us, or you can do nothing about it, and that's a real problem. So anyway, for me, that's my 2 cents on Pathfinder's Blade.
I think that's at least 10 cents. So
it's more like about 17 years, I would say. But yeah, that's but there's a real rabbit hole, interlocking kind of thing. So anyway, doesn't matter. I've talked enough.
Baz, you want to nominate something?
So for me, for Crab, I'm going to say Way of the Crab. Way of the Crab as a Dragon player is a real pain in the ass. It makes me hurt in so many different ways, and I'm not going to complain about those. What I think should be changed about Way of the Crab is to lock it into the conflict phase, and not even just a conflict, but just the conflict phase generally. There are a couple of different ways to play it to get extra value out of it that the Crab have been playing, and legitimately so. But I think it's a little confusing for beginning players, for starting players who don't understand that you can do it during Dynasty phase, that you can do it during the later phases after the conflict. You know, after Fate has been cleared and characters have gone away, and all of a sudden they're hitting another Way of the Crab. Stuff like that. It's a tricky one, because a couple of Crab players have said that Way of the Crab can just sit in your hand and you'll never have an opportunity to play it. And that is true. So, you know, I don't want to kind of nerf it to the ground where they're never able to play it, but I do feel it would make a lot more sense if it was just in the conflict phase, where, you know, you make your moves, play your answers, and the opposing clan still has to play around it to an extent, but not to the extent where they're having to put extra fate on 1-cost characters just so they'll stick around a little bit longer, and kind of weird situations like that. Hopefully that makes sense and won't raise the ire of the Crab clan.
Any other thoughts on Way of the Crab?
I think that's a good I think that's a good
I
change.
think it's fine. I think people find it tricky to play. So I think it introduces interesting metagame decisions. So I'm fine with it, but that's just me because I do. When you play it the other hand, you see the costs on it sometimes, and people often have it sit in their hand waiting for the perfect opportunity when you could just take a good opportunity and make your opponent have a good choice. So I'm okay with it because it's actually there is a little bit of skill getting value out of it all the time. There are times you just go, well, assassination, way to crab, woo, and that's super good. But there are also times you're like, okay, I weigh the crab now, and that makes the most awkward choice for my opponent. And I think it helps against some stuff like someone going, I just put all this fate on one guy. Woo! This strategy works 100% of the time. It doesn't work against Way of the Crab. And that's a good thing for the game.
All right. Owen, what would you like to nominate for the Crab Clan?
For the Crab Clan, there are a couple of underpowered crab cards, which I think... No, because it's also an opportunity to talk about cards that aren't quite there.
I agree.
Oh no, definitely.
Yep.
We just weren't expecting you to go straight in with the crab buffs from day one.
Yeah, well, we're doing crabs. So Kuni Ritsuko is my pick. If you compare Kuni Ritsuko to a card called Feast or Famine, which we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah.
No, just look at her.
Okay.
She has to be there.
Yeah.
She has to win the conflict.
Uh-huh.
And you have to choose an attacking character. Those are none of the restrictions that are on Feast or Famine.
Sounds a lot like Meditations on the Tau, but go on.
No, she's not even it's basically she's about as strong as Meditations on the Tau, but harder because you've got to win the conflict. So if she didn't need to be participating, or she could take it off anybody, I think people would see a lot more play out of her because there is a lot of debate in the clan about the value of winning on the defense. Is it worth the bother? And a lot of the times the payoff is a little bit difficult to quantify. So people are kind of go wait for it. And it'd be good to see some of the defensive aspects of the plan emphasized in that you got to win a bit slower. And so that's why I think they should take another look at her. Well, if they were going to take a look at her, she's a good idea that just isn't quite there because she's got a ton of restrictions on her in the same way that Tominatsu did. I think they were very worried about a crab deck kind of stalling the game out, playing hyper defensively and getting too much on the defense. And I think that's reflected in those cards where some of the more aggressive cards don't have those kind of breaks on. That's it.
Okay. So, Justin, back around to you. Do you want to maybe...
Yeah, sure. Okay, so...
I know you can either go crab again or go crane.
No. Actually, my huge beef is honestly. I mean, you could make a mention for Iron Mine, but Iron Mine, it's not the worst card in the world. It's still really, really strong. But no, will we move on to crane? Because we could be here all night.
Yeah, absolutely, go for it.
Okay, so to the surprise of absolutely no one, Guest of Honor is the card I would nominate for a slight tweaking when it comes to crane. So blanket locking out of any card type it's not a fun way to play the game. It's not very enjoyable. Again, it's a card that demands very specific answers, or else it runs the risk of just steamrolling you. And this is not the kind of, again, okay, I suppose it's not the kind of experience I would like to see in Five Rings. Like, Five Rings should be a game of decisions, of brinkmanship, of outplaying your opponent, as opposed to slapping a card on the table going, you can't do anything, I attack here, which just isn't, it's not very enjoyable. So the change to Guest of Honor would be to remove the blanket, the blanket effect that your opponent cannot play effects, and replace it with an interrupt that just says you get to cancel one of your opponent's events once per conflict. It's still very, very powerful, but it doesn't completely shut your opponent out. And on a 4-cost character, I still think even reduced to canceling one event per conflict, I still think that Guest of Honor would be one of the best and strongest 4-cost characters in the game. So that would be my change.
All right. Any thoughts, or Baz, do you want to pick next?
I was thinking similar. My pick would have been Guest of Honor as well. I was thinking maybe that you could only play events that target Guest of Honor, or that do not target guest of honor, or something weird like that. But yeah, I think Justin has covered it well. So instead, for Crane, I'd like to talk about Kakita Kazin. And this is not a nerf, this is a buff. Kazin is their innate duel, and I guess to an extent was the great hope of the Crane clan, but just didn't work out. And everything about him is lovely except for the duel. The duel just isn't very interesting, and I think it kind of harkens back to a defensive honor style deck that doesn't really exist in this game anymore. If you gave him something simple, like it is a duel, and if he wins, you gain 2 honor. Like, essentially, it's a Ring of Air effect. That, to me, sounds like it could be cool. Would support a Crane deck, and would still make him a worse dueler than Raitsugu, and the true dueling champions of the Empire remain the Muramoto, like it should be. Any questions? But yeah, like he's got a duel, and I think just tweaking his duel so it was a little bit more effective and got them something else out of it, he would be perfect for it. At the moment, I think they'd love to play him because he is a duelist, and the test of skill gets a slight buff from a duelist, but I don't think he's worth it, which is a shame.
Okay. Owen.
My pick is Wave the Crane. Wave the Crane is a terrible card for Crane. It is an incredibly powerful effect, honoring on demand, and it has caused their glory numbers to be reduced. Because the fact that you can just wave the Crane out of nowhere, honor one of your Crane characters, has meant that a load of Crane people who you'd think would be 2 glory maybe are instead 1 glory, because you couldn't just have them being honored out of nowhere. If you look at Savvy Politician, she couldn't be 2 glory. It would just be farcical, because you could just wave the Crane out of nowhere, and all of a sudden she's an absolute monster capable of taking province on her own. I think it really hurts them. It really, really hurts them that they basically, Phoenix and Crane have approached the problem from 2 different directions, where Crane can honor easily, so they have low glory, which is the wrong way to do it. Whereas Phoenix have come on from, they have high glory, so it's expensive to honor them, but they get a lot when they're honored. So it's left Crane in a situation where their glory numbers have been squeezed in, and they may go back up, but I think Way the Crane will make the designers very wary of giving them a high glory character for the rest of the game, until eventually we kind of get comfortable with the idea, okay, maybe it's okay to have a 3 glory person, a cheap 3 glory person for Crane. But can you imagine a cheap 3 glory person right now? I cannot. So yeah. So basically, I think it hurts them a lot. I think their weanings are a lot more 1 glory than you'd expect.
Okay. That brings us round to Dragon. Justin. Unless.
Oh yeah. No.
Yeah.
Okay. My pick for Dragon would be a Gaseous Swordsmith.
Yeah. This is how it starts. The Phoenix start looking at the Agasha. First thing, all of a sudden, then you look and you're missing your family.
So a Gaseous Swordsmith would be my pick. Like a lot of hullabaloo is made about Crane's fantastic range of 2-cost characters, and not a lot is said about Dragon's amazing range of 2-cost characters. And I think the Gaseous Swordsmith is an issue from the Gaseous Swordsmith is incredibly potent draw that directly supports just about any deck it goes into. There's no opportunity cost involved in its draw, and no real additional cost to it. So it's just so the Gaseous Swordsmith is it's just too good. It's just a little too good. So I sat down and I was trying to think of ways to tweak this or fix it. I thought maybe add a bow cost, but that's way too expensive. That would kill the card completely. That's just too powerful. A stat tweak really doesn't do much because this card is all about the card draw. You're not interested in the stats particularly. Like, one of the issues is that this is a card that allows you to hunt for things like Cloud the Mind and play Cloud the Mind because it's a Shigenja. So it's a card that gives Dragon on its own almost access to an element that arguably Dragon should not have access to. They have a lot of other things going for them, and being able to control the other side of the board is maybe something that the Dragon shouldn't be great at. So the tweak I would make potentially. So we've got Travis saying should be a reaction to entering play. I disagree. Actually, I think the tweak should be that you can get a weapon. It should be restricted to weapons. It is a swordsmith, so it still has function in a deck that is based around weapons, as it was, I think, intended to do. But it doesn't give you access to things like ornate fans, so you're weaker politically. It doesn't give you access to Cloud the Mind. It doesn't give you access to reprieves. So it focuses the card a great deal more. It makes it all about weapons, and it cuts away some of the more powerful stuff that it can do, and that arguably a 2-cost character should in no way be capable of doing. So that would be my fix. It can fetch weapons, but not other attachments.
All right, Baz.
I was going to go with Doom Shigenja. Really, there is no drawback. Like, a 1-cost character, you're not going to put Fate on it anyway. So, 3/3 are your stats, which are just fantastic. It is actually difficult to find a 3. We have a 3-cost character, the Enlightened Warrior, who is 3/3. And, he's got an ability, but doesn't really do that much. The Doom Shigenja is also Shigenja, helps kind of establish Shigenja in the Dragon deck. You've got that, the Agasha Swordsmith we've talked about already, and you've got Yukuni. So, like, those are cards that are probably never going to go away, which means you're always going to be able to run Cloud the Mind, as Justin was just talking about, with just those. And not because you've got a wide array of Shigenja, but just because these Shigenja are Shigenja that you always want to play when they turn up. Doom Shigenja, every time it turns up, you're gonna pop into play. He does, or she does have, I think, is it a limited keyword? So I can only assume that in playtest there were more limited cards, and not just the Doom Shigenja. But all that limitation really does is stop you playing 2 in the same turn or 3 in the same turn, which I guess does make sense. But it's not too onerous if I see 2 of them to make 1 and then save the next one for next turn. I mean, it's just an absolutely fantastic character. It's above the curve. It's probably never going to come out of Dragon decks, which I think is the challenge there. Even if you're going monk focused or you go Bushi focused, you're always going to play the Doom Shigenja because it's just fantastic.
Sense. All right. Owen, what's your choice?
And Neaton Master. It should not be twice per turn. Everything else is fine, but twice per turn is too much in the early game. It's frankly oppressive in the early game. He's often in 3 conflicts on turn 1, and he is stronger in every conflict. And yeah, it's just, there's no reason for it to be twice per turn. Let's say you manage to bow him. You basically you splash Dragon, you play Murmur's Fury, and he just gets back up again for free. And you're just like, why did I bother? He's oppressive in a bad way in the early game. He's just too much, and there's no reason for him to be twice per turn. That's it. That's the only thing on it. There's no reason for him to be twice per turn.
So I think there might be a reason.
Okay.
And there's no way to know without kind of getting an inside view of playtest, which we don't have. But one of the first questions that I asked the design team when they were demoing stuff, and we saw this, was what happens when you drop your 3rd restricted weapon? And they said you can, but you have to destroy one of the pre-existing items. If that was an on-the-cuff ruling or wasn't made clear during playtest, you may have had players getting the 2 activations with their two weapons and then never being able to play a 3rd weapon without destroying their own weapon or something like that. In that scenario, you've got getting 2 per turn is amazing, but that locks it out for the rest of the game. And I suspect that's what happened in this case. That the Knitting Master was tested on the assumption that you could not drop a 3rd weapon. That's my thought on it, and that's why I think it may have had that. But yeah, I completely agree. Twice per turn, despite being thematic, is terrifying when it happens.
Yeah, I think we saw a couple of games, and you were talking about a few others where this has the potential to end games in 1st and 2nd turn.
Travis saying, heard from Tales from Knitting Master used to be missing 1 word from his text box in early testing. Can you guys guess what word it was and why that word was added?
Let's have a look at his text box.
Limit.
Master. All right. After you attach a weapon. That would have been good. Attachment to this character. Ready. Could be missing ready. No.
Yeah, weapon seems to make the most sense. Yeah. Oh my God. Jesus, that would have been. Oof.
Have another fan go to town.
Yeah.
And on a more positive note, for a card that I'd like to see buffed, out of the dragon ones, I would love to see the Enlightened Warrior, who's that same 2/2 for 3 character. I would love to see him have the monk trait. The Bushi trait doesn't really do much for a dragon, and a extra monk. And the art is even a bald guy hanging around, so it would have been perfect. Anyway, just a minor thing. We can have swords too. Monks can have swords. It's cool. Maybe.
He's bald.
Yeah,
like he's
bald is
bald.
what's important. It's perfect. Yeah.
Bald is monk, right?
Some people, their hair does fall out naturally as well. It's been known to happen.
I don't know. Maybe, Travis has a katana, which is a fair point. Maybe he stole it. Those monks weren't always the most morally upright of individuals.
That is true. Very true.
He's just resting in his hands. Lion, Justin.
Oh yeah, well, God, it's a rogues gallery for this one, isn't it? I've gone for Lion. Yeah.
So as you say, maybe we should get Justin go first and just shoot the obvious fish in the barrel each time.
Yeah, well, I mean that's it. I've got the easy job, easy. So Lion's Pride Brawler is my pick. So there were a few others, and I'm sure we'll get to them as we go round. But okay, so Lion's Pride Brawler, incredibly oppressive on the first turn at the start of the game. So there are a couple of issues with this. So apart from the fact that this card creates really, really unpleasant situations for your opponent, where you just go, yeah, well, what's the point of me actually playing this game because Lion's Pride Brawler is just at the table turn 1. This card has serious implications for designing Lion as we go forward. Okay, so you've got roughly 50% chance of seeing seeing a specific character in your opening mulligan if you mulligan hard for it. Okay, so we'll just take that as 50% mark. If Lion have, for example, and I'm just spitballing here, I don't have any numbers, but if Lion wins 60% of the games in which they see a Lion's Pride Brawler turn 1, that means that when Lion don't see a Lion's Pride Brawler turn 1, they win 40% of their games. And that means that Lion is a crap clan, and their win percentage is being completely papered over by this single character turning up on turn 1. So the situation that puts you in is either the designers look at the numbers and go, actually, look, Lion's doing it, Lion's kind of winning around 50%. They're perfectly fine, and it becomes it's a draw dependent game. If you draw Lion's Pride Brawler, you do fantastically. If you don't draw Lion's Pride Brawler, you're at a serious disadvantage. And the other downside is if designers do start to buff the remainder of the Lion's Pride cards. If the designers do buff the cards apart from Lion's Pride Brawler, then Lion's winning percentage can actually explode because they have a huge advantage when Lion's Pride Brawler goes first, and significantly less of a disadvantage when they're going second. So this card needs to be heavily restricted. In fact, in terms of what it does, and there are a lot of ways.
So hold on. You can only attach 2 Lion's Pride Brawlers at a time. Is that what we're saying?
Yes. Yeah. John is pointing out the math is wrong. I'm just aiming at 50% numbers here. Like this, it's not specific numbers. It's just pure averages. Nothing. So there are a lot. I mean, there are a number of ways you could restrict the Lion's Pride Brawler. You could reduce her force to 1, which would appear to be kind of pretty bad. But once you take the stronghold into consideration, you could bump her to a 2. I still don't think that's a particularly satisfactory solution because the main issue is that she can bow people outside the conflict. So yeah, I would. I mean, certainly to begin with, I would absolutely restrict her to being able to bow people that are participating in the conflict only, and possibly also restrict the conflict type. So my fix would be, while this character is attacking during a political conflict, choose a participating character with equal or lower military skill than this character, bow that character. And that might restrict her enough to prevent her from really just dominating early games in which she turns up first. Like, this is the reason Lion's Pride Brawler is specifically the reason that I will always choose to go first against Lion, because I don't think you can afford to go second against Lion's Pride Brawler. So
I assume that's assuming you knew what you were playing against ahead of time.
Well, I mean, you'll know you'll be playing against Lion because they're right over there and you can see their stronghold. And I know, gasp. So yeah, you see, John, John is saying in chat that bowing people at home is a cool thematic thing. Yeah, it may be a cool thematic thing. It's appalling. It's an appalling mechanical thing. It's terrible. It just, no, it's way too powerful. I mean, maybe the intent was that if, the people just don't defend against her and she bows people at home as if they're, oh, you don't see the stronghold when you pick who goes first? Okay, well, wow.
You'll know. Okay.
Well.
You'll know in top 16 because you'll get to see opposing deck list, but you don't know the rest of the time. So stop cheating, Walsh. Yeah. We're on to you.
Okay, obviously, yeah, fair enough. My apologies. But so maybe the whole idea was that you don't defend against her and she bows someone at home as if you were defending. But that's just a terrible, terrible way of designing a card, because that's not the way that things work out all the time in games. So she needs heavy restrictions. She's too powerful. There's no way she can bow people outside the conflict. And probably the conflict type should be restricted as well, because the ability is just good. Even when she's in a conflict, she almost guarantees that you win the conflict she's in anyway. Because if you can bow an opposing character, you can just bow the person who's opposing you, and you probably win that. So even with the ability restricted to being in conflict, she's still incredibly powerful. As she is, she's too good, way too good. So anyway, there we go. Lion's Pride Brawler.
Okay, Baz.
Well, the other easy choice is the Kitsu Spirit Caller, also known as the Lion's Pride Brawler again. And that's a good day because they're not pulling out one of their 4 or 5 cost characters. The Kitsu Spirit Caller isn't really a 3 cost character. It is the best character that they have sitting in their discard, which I know early game isn't always a lot, but normally they're going to have 1 or 2. So it is deceptive for what it looks to be, and it gives Lion far too many options. So it's extremely cost effective in that you're paying a lot less for what you're getting. It is always the right character for the right circumstances, assuming that you have the choices sitting in your discard pile. And it's just too much. I think if the Kitsu Spirit Caller instead was just able to copy the ability of a character in the discard pile, it would still be very good. If that Lion's Pride Brawler was gone and hadn't been repeatedly beaten by the stick that we're talking about already, you know, the Kitsu Spirit Caller would copy the ability, would be on one military, a few more boosts would be able to use it, or you're copying Ujaki's ability, or you're copying, you know, a reaction from, oh, no, sure, it's not reaction, but, you know, there are options. The combination of basically getting all of the stats and all of the ability for bowing your 3-cost character is just too much, I think. But yeah, that's a Spirit Caller in a nutshell.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I think this card needs to have needs to have a restriction on a cost restriction on the characters it can target. If this could only target characters with 3 or lower cost, maybe even 4 or lower cost, it would be much more palatable than it is. It's the fact that it can bring back to Turi to double resolve a ring and blow out a military conflict, or bring back, potentially in combination with Glory, blow out an entire game. Those are the hugely problematic interactions. So if it could only bring, then maybe it's not actually good enough at that stage. But as it stands, it fundamentally breaks the economics of the game, and those cards they're terrible to have. They shouldn't be in. They shouldn't exist. But yeah, anyway.
Owen, what's your nomination?
Travis was mentioning For Greater Glory in the chat, and while For Greater Glory is a really powerful card, For Greater Glory I think is mostly abusable because of Lion's Prime, Proud Baller, and Spirit Caller. It's not that Spirit Caller combos with it, it's just Spirit Caller makes it so easy to win the conflict and make sure you break the province. And Lion's Proud Baller makes it a total headache to defend, because if you try to defend and pump ahead of her, if she can get equal to you, she can completely invalidate all that pump work. So you go, okay, defend my guy, I'll bonsai, and she bonsais, and you pump with something, and then she pumps with something. And if you're out of pumps, then she bows you, and all of those cards are wasted. And that's what makes, because sometimes you go, if she isn't there, you can get in the way and go, right, I'm going to bonsai to stop you breaking, which means all your guys here aren't going to get a free fate from Greater Glory. I can actually play around it a bit. LPB makes it so it's incredibly difficult to play around for Greater Glory. It's just like you're getting hit really, really, really well. It definitely does break the economy of the game. How much it does kind of depends on what's there. For Greater Glory in charge is backbreaking some turns, and I could absolutely agree with that. But I think it's more down to certain other cards being a bit too synergetic with it, rather than For Greater Glory itself being a really huge problem. And my pick is actually Ageless Crone, because Ageless Crone for me, if you look at some of the other one-costers that were released in the Imperial cycle, a lot of them are zip in their other stat and only kind of do their thing for a turn. Ageless Crone can be played into either conflict. Ageless Crone's ability is around for as long as she's around. So you can put like a fade on her if you want. She's there for 2 turns. And she's less potent in the second turn because your opponent's at least a little forewarned, but that can be an incredible, painful lockout. And I think she's a little too flexible for what she is. If she was zip military, I'd be like, that's grand. But the fact that she's 0-1 means she can be dropped into any conflict and have a really, really major effect.
Okay, that brings us on to Phoenix.
Oh no, we've got one honorable mention
I see.
Implacable Magistrate. Implacable Magistrate is another card that it's another one of the. It's similar to Haughty Magistrate, maybe not quite as oppressive, but still really, really bad. That blanks anyone that isn't honored. Lion have a lot of ways of honoring their own gods. It's one of their themes. And this card is just an absolute beating for certain clans. Scorpion have a terrible time against it. Crab have a terrible time against it. And cards that basically invalidate the entire defensive plans or endeavors of an entire clan. They really shouldn't exist. So in Magistrate, I don't know why. All the Magistrates, I would quite happily see all of them gone from the game. But this is a card that definitely warrants an additional change. And I'm not sure what you would do to fix this. maybe something like honorable, non characters who aren't honored subtract their glory from their skill for the conflict or something. I don't know, but you'd really have to sit down and do some hard work on this one to figure out how you're going to make it a playable card, like a fair card. Yeah. So, yeah, actually, Travis has got a decent idea. Yeah, she only counts honored characters, not herself. Even still, with Lions' ability to honor their own guys, and they have a lot of guys with pride. That would definitely be better. It would definitely be better. But anyway, so she gets in on the honorable mentions, which brings us on to Phoenix and Haughty Magistrate. Yay! What a pile of crap this card is.
Clarify that.
Oh yeah, as in this is a really badly designed card. Again, we've got cards that this is a card that again effectively negates the entire defensive endeavors of your opponent, almost no matter what they do. There are a handful of characters in the entire game that will contribute their skill against this character once this character is pumped out Stronghold, and they're all expensive. They're all champion level characters. And Travis is right. Phoenix have very many poorly designed cards, but this is absolute top of the heap. This card should not exist. It's awful. Like it's one of those cards where you flip it and bring it out against almost any clan, and you can't even feel good about the fact that you're going over and they can't do anything about it.
Oh, you can feel a little bit good.
No, no.
I would.
No, in the early days, it was kind of amazing. You're going, obviously, because Phoenix were in a bad place for a while. Then you get this guy, he goes across, and you think, oh wow, this is what power feels like. And then, after a couple of games, you just see your opponent visibly deflate every time the card hits the table. And yeah, a game should be challenging and fun and involving for both players. And this card really just turns that off. It's just like, yeah, well, there we go.
I see you've chosen the honorable path rather than the Bloodspeaker path for this particular cycle then.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. There are plenty of Phoenix cards to be improved, but this card is absolutely detrimental to the game and shouldn't exist in its current form. Now, if I was going to fix it, the thought I had was that when this character is attacking, you subtract its glory from the opposing character's skill, and he should have glory 0. So he does nothing on his own. Once he's pumped with the Stronghold, he will subtract 2 from everybody opposing him. That's still really quite powerful, but it's not horrifically backbreaking, I think. Yeah. And it does mean that a single Haughty Magistrate doesn't just shut down Casada, which just makes no sense. So yeah, it's a badly designed card, and yeah.
And when he hits the table, some clans, no one defends. The majority of clans, if they're lucky, they'll get 1 or 2 that can actually defend against them. Reality is they have an entire turn where they just walk over you, and then you're hoping that you can dishonor them in some way. And for many clans, that's just Ring of Fire. So, yeah, it is pretty nightmarish.
We've got Weapon Taco in chat saying Dishonor seems rampant enough to have answers for this card. Yeah, dishonoring him is definitely a way to put a slight stamp, or to slow him down a little bit.
Yeah.
But he'll still go across, he'll still pump his glory, and then he'll just go, well, I'll attach a katana and banzai, and your province is still gone, and there's still nothing you can do about it.
And to say that dishonoring helps, and the dishonoring is out there, yes, dishonor is out there, but not everyone has easy access to dishonor. Most people play 3 court games, but court games is something that can be worked around. If you assign 2 characters, you're almost immune to it, at least the first one. A couple of clans like Scorpion can, play their way to Scorpion on the Haughty Magistrate and feel good about themselves, and have a couple of other effects that will also get that down there. But you can't look at a character and have it completely wipe out a couple of clans and say it's still fine, because there are counters to it in other clans.
Yeah, he's not fine in any way. And as Travis is saying, Travis is saying, what if he only works on defense? I think that would be an even worse idea.
Yeah, at least
Yeah,
you could just give up
and I
the
mean-
defending and take provinces instead. That's kind of
Yeah,
something.
and as Travis points out, if the Phoenix player has the favor, then it doesn't matter if he's dishonored. He can still go over and just take whatever ring he wants, and there's nothing you can do to stop him. So
he has the favor. Oh, because you're
so
always
the
getting
Phoenix
plus one.
player has the favor because you have the +1. You have the +1 in the conflict. So this guy is just a huge problem. Just needs to be fixed somehow. There we go. So onwards.
Onwards. Baz, your Phoenix choice.
So yeah, there's a couple of them, but I'm going to be slightly biased, and I'm going to go for Against the Waves because I hate when Yukuni gets bowed with Against the Waves. It is absolutely.
By the way.
It's an absolutely fantastic card in Phoenix generally because you can straighten your Shigenja characters, which is what it's primarily used for. The fact that you can bow characters as well is great, but it's only good against certain clans, which means it's a little the usefulness of it doesn't depend on your deck, but depends on your opponent's deck. It is almost essential when you're playing against line, so you can deal with the Kitsu Spirit Callers. But I just really hate the fact that Dragon actually have a clan champion who is a Shigenja and just gets bowed constantly with Against the Waves. It really, really annoys me. So yeah, that's it. That might be a little bit personal and biased. I think if it didn't say opposing, I think it would still be as great as it is for Phoenix, and wouldn't stick in my craw.
We're
losing you a little bit, as.
Because I'm mumbling.
No, I think there's something Mikey. Owen.
My pick is Consumed by Five Fires. Consumed by Five Fires is just not good enough. If you compare it to some of the other cards, even symmetric stuff like Mono no Oware or for Fate Worse Than Death, it just looks bad. It's got a restriction and they need a Seeker. It's got a restriction and you need a Shigenja, and it costs 5. It is just way too expensive. The old joke of it being consumed by 3 fires being miles better is not a bad idea, but it should have something else. I'm not sure what. Maybe a cantrip effect, maybe something else like that. But like, you could take the cantrip effect off Mono no Oware and put it on Consumed by 5 fires, and I think, some people will be a lot happier. But it's too expensive. It's, despite how powerful the effect is, it's just super expensive in a depressing way.
Yeah, can't argue. So that brings us.
And one honorable mention.
Honorable mention.
This is
Honorable
not
mention.
This is a serious mention.
As another terribly designed card, Kanjo District. The card is unbelievably oppressive. Game winning on its own. If Kanjo flips and a Phoenix player has the favor, you've just lost, basically. Unless the board state is already completely unmanageable for the Phoenix player, you are just going to lose that game. It's completely overpowered. And yeah, so the fix for this, either bow that character or move it, or take away move it home. Even at that, it would still be very, very good. But bow a character and move it home is completely insane.
Yep.
So
maybe reduce that province strength slightly.
Yeah, actually, and that would be another thing. The province strength buff should probably not exist for this. And as Travis says, Kanjo on public forum is Pathfinder's Blade or lose the game. And yeah. So I mean, when a card is being mentioned in the same breath as Pathfinder's Blade, when Pathfinder's Blade is a specific answer to a card that you need to have, then you know that card is utterly broken and needs to be tweaked in some means. So Kanjo District, complete horseshit, terrible card.
I'm seeing some quotes for should have a negative province strength.
That would be. Yeah, totally. I mean, honestly, Forgotten Library is another card that maybe should have a negative penalty province strength.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's very good.
Scorpion then, Justin.
Okay, my pick is, and there are a few. Well, there could be a few here. Actually, my pick is Yogo Hiraway, who is the real clan champion of the Scorpion. So the main issue with this guy is for me anyway, personally, is the lack of restriction on whether he's attacking or defending. And ideally, like, this guy should be attacking. So the way I would fix this guy is I would actually buff him very slightly first. I would give him +1 military. And then I would change his ability to say that he has to be attacking to use his ability. Like the Crane character, who's, oh, for God's sake, Challenger, the Doji Challenger. And I would also modify the dishonoring as well. I think the character needs to be readied. If the character is readied and participating at the end of the conflict, dishonor it. Because otherwise you simply pull in bowed guys and dishonor them willy-nilly, and that is not enormously fair. It's basically, he's got Ring of Fire tacked onto him effectively. If you could pull in bowed guys, that's not good enough. So as I said, I would give him +1 military and then restrict him to attacking, and the character he targets, if they are ready and participating at the end of the conflict, dishonor them. And I think then he would be a powerful card, but a great deal more balanced. Because, yeah, being able to pull people in on defense is awful because they attack. You're losing 2 people on the attack. It's shocking.
Baz.
John, he's going to... Yeah.
So I actually struggled when I looked through the Scorpion cards. I'm tempted to say City of the Open Hand, to go straight for the Stronghold, but I'm not sure what you'd change with it. So it's probably fine. So instead, I'm going to say Yujiro. I think Yujiro needs to be buffed because I do not think that card is playable. I quite like Yujiro. But the fact, so he's a 3-cost 3/1 with 2 glory, Bushi Imperial Magistrate. While this character is participating in conflict, ignore the effects of each status token on each participating character. So he's not one of the core magistrates, but all of the other core magistrates say everybody else except for this magistrate. But Yujiro doesn't. He's one of the few 2 glory characters that they have. But if you honor him up, he blanks himself. It's so frustrating. So I would probably change him such that, what was I thinking? That maybe something like he doubles the effects of status tokens. So if he's honored, he'll be +4, and the dishonored person doubles the negative of their glory. That would be a tremendously good card. But right now, Yujiro, I think, is a cool character who unfortunately doesn't have a great card.
Yeah, one of my favorites. Owen.
My pick is Bayushi Liar, because I'll grant you there has to be a best 1-drop in the game, but he's just ludicrous. The value on him is insane. If you compare him to the Matsu Berserker is a really good card. He's a really strong early play. Bayushi Liar is basically better in every way. It's courtier, it's 0 glory, which I actually really want in Scorpion because you're dishonoring your guys all the time. He's got sincerity. He's just ludicrous. Now, I get Scorpion's thing is kind of having slightly stronger personalities than some other clans, but he's the one guy who really strikes me as where's this guy's stats coming from? Where's that utility coming from? It's kind of crazy. I don't think he's like completely broken or, shuts everyone out of the game, but you can never get a better 1-drop than this. Like, this guy is pretty much as good as a 1-drop could be. I think it'd be farcical to do anything better. Even Doom Shigenji, which says is too strong, at least has a fairly, silly 2 restrictions on him. This guy's just nothing but upside. The Zip military can occasionally hurt you with Riot of the Cause. That's about it. He's just ludicrous, Not in a broken destroys the game sort of way, but just in the value. The value's too strong.
What would you change to make him better?
Oh, I don't know. I maybe give him glory 1.
Up his glory to balance him.
Yeah, give him glory 1 maybe.
I have to admit, I do love the fact that he has sincerity. That the Bayushi Liar has sincerity.
That's kind of funny.
Oh no, the flavor's lovely, but
Oh yeah, like I think mechanically I'd love to remove it, but I think it's fantastic that it's there. And actually, Scorpion, who like doing their Dishonored, don't have great card draw. This is one of the few kind of card draw aspects that they have, which like really wraps them up into a beautiful bundle. Quite frankly.
Yeah, he's just super. Like I've seen Scorpion players put Fate on him because they're like, "What are they going to do? Assassinate him so I can draw a card earlier?" No, because he's just that good value. He's just fabulous. You know, I don't think he's broken. I don't think he breaks the game. I don't think he's got a horrible MPE. But his value would be too high. He's too well designed. There's no edges. No edges. Nothing to catch in your clothing or deck. Just like slides right to play.
And so any further honorable mentions for the Scorpion clan?
I do have one.
Grinning.
Yeah. Way of the Scorpion. And not necessarily for the reason you'd think. So I do think Way of the Scorpion, much like Way of the Crane, actually is an overpowered effect for 0.
Hold on, let me just check here, because what I think is that Way of the Scorpion hurts Yukuni, and any card that hurts Yukuni needs to be nerfed. That's my thinking. Am I right? Yeah. Am I wrong? I'm right.
You are partially right, but mostly wrong.
Oh.
Okay, so the effect is too powerful. But however, the real problem with this card is that you have to choose a participating non-Scorpion character, and this has the unintended. This has the unintended, I think, consequence of compelling Scorpion players to play favored niece because they can't afford to have dead cards in their hand in a mirror match. So you play Way of the Scorpion, and you now have to play favored niece as well. And that is a badly designed card. You don't want cards that basically compel the player to play a different card to make up for the downside of that card. So to change this card, I would give it a 1 fate cost, and I would remove the non-Scorpion character bit. Just dishonor a participating character. And that would be it.
Why the 1 fate cost?
Because the effect is too powerful at 0. Much the same with Way of the Crane. If I was changing Way of the Crane, I think I would give Way of the Crane, maybe Way of the Crane. Yeah, actually, if they had higher glory guys, it would absolutely be totally worth. In fact, no, Guard Duty is amazing, and Guard Duty is totally worth 1 fate. So yeah, no, I would give Way of the Crane 1 fate cost, and I would give this one fate cost, and remove the. Yes, I would. John's asking, would I make Way of the Crane 1 fate cost? And yes, I would. I actually would make Way of the Crane 1 fate cost. It turns on a whole bunch of their cards.
Is this a tricky opponent dependent situation though? Like, when they're facing against a Scorpion clan, even if they could dishonor them, they're not really getting much out of it. Whereas when they're facing against Line, they can get a good impact. You can get some street quality.
It's 1 point of honor loss, and that can be a big deal. So, as I said, I mean, but the fact that it's a non-Scorpion character, as I said, you then have to play favored niece, which is bad because you play this, so you have to play another card, and you are locked into deck making. So it's locking you out of deck making decisions because you have to play a card to support this card because of the drawback, and the card is already too powerful in certain matchups anyway. So 1 fate cost, remove the restriction. I think it would be fine. And John says Way of the Crane also doesn't say participating, which is bullshit, and that's also probably fair. Again, the ways are not well designed cards for the most part. So some of them are fine, some of them are good. A lot of them are not well designed, and I don't think Way of the Scorpion is a well designed card. So anyway, there we go. That's honorable for Scorpion done.
Okay, so Unicorn. Justin.
Nothing but nerfs. Okay, my card is Shinjo Altan Sarnai, and she should be way better because clan champions should be good, and she's not. So yeah, we've got nothing but buffs. Okay, so for Altan Sarnai, I would change her ability. So I would keep her 5/4/2 glory. That's absolutely fine. Reaction after you win a military conflict. Choose an enemy character. That character cannot straighten for the rest of the turn. Bow that character. And she'd be amazing. And that would be my change.
All right. Baz.
For me, it would be Cavalry Reserves. I think it's far too good, and it's breaking the maybe up the cost slightly, but I'd be removing the cavalry restrictions. So the reason I'm looking at cavalry reserves is I think it has a potential negative consequence of making the designers double check everything that they make that has cavalry on it. And that's not a situation I want Unicorn to be in. I want them to be able to get tons of Unicorn characters and not have any issues with that. So if Cavalry Reserves was able to get any, maybe up the cost slightly to kind of compensate. I'm not sure if you need to do that. But yeah, remove the cavalry restriction. And not because I think it's too weak. I think it's an excellent card. But I think it has negative consequences of the overall design. As a twofer, I'd probably meddle around with Endless Plains as well. It was a pretty terrifying province when I considered it first, but looking at it now, I don't think it really deserves to destroy itself to trigger. Even if it didn't break the province to trigger its effect, just flipped on reveal, it's still 2 province strength. It's easy enough to take. I probably wouldn't break the province to let it trigger its effect. And you've got Pathfinder's Blade, so who cares, you know? Provinces that trigger things, that doesn't happen.
Okay. So then Eoin?
Yeah, I would severely nerf or get rid of cavalry reserves. I think it does things where it heavily restricts what characters can get cavalry, and it's super vulnerable to cancel. So it's this massive eggs all in one basket card that I think just hurts them later on. I don't think it does them a massive amount of favors. I would take a look at one of the other cards, like maybe there's so many unicorn cards that can do it above. I mean, War Dog Master, I think, is the really terrible card that could just do it being like
Pattern every way.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, I nearly popped into 3-1 and basically maybe make the effect something else. Stop him bowing or something if he flips a guy with whatever. I would do something different with them. They're just that's not what Unicorn need. They do not need more, hey, we're better at fighting military conflict stuff and still terrible at fighting political conflicts and leaning super hard on different stuff for Unicorn. Not sure what, but a lot of Unicorn cards could do it a redesign because I'm not sure what they're doing. Like, I don't know what this card's meant to do. I really
don't. Okay, and then neutrals. Justin.
Yay, the Feast or Famine rant. We've all been waiting for it.
Totally fine and balanced. Learn to play. Learn to play.
So this card, wow. I mean, this card for me comes in slightly below Pathfinder's Blade as the most damaging card to the game that exists. The card is a complete blowout if you run into it, and because you don't know where you're going, it's pure chance, pure luck if you hit it, pure luck if you don't. So it has the effect of taking 2 fate from any character. Oh yeah, I mean, Travis is saying Feast or Famine is more damaging than Pathfinder's Blade, and I agree, but I think Feast or Famine is completely fixable, whereas I don't think Pathfinder's Blade is fixable at all. So Feast or Famine, when it's broken, you just take 2 fate from any character on your opponent's side of the board, up to 2 fate from any character on your opponent's side of the board, and put it on one of yours that doesn't have fate. It's ludicrous. If you run into this turn 1, you may have just lost the game, and that's an appalling. It's an appalling card design. Sorry to whoever designed it, but it's terrible. So if I were going to fix this, I would fix this with an additional line of text, and characters have ability, or sorry, characters in this action bow this character. So you will never be forced to take this province. But if you run into it, your attack is basically over unless you are prepared to break it. And I think that probably fixes the egregious side of it.
So, give me that again.
Explain okay, again. So the the text I would add is characters at this province have action bow this character. So if you roll in there with your Neaton Master without his Pathfinder's Blade because you haven't been lucky enough to draw it, or participating characters, characters have bow this character. So you roll in, you hit Feast or Famine, you've got 2 fate on your Neaton Master. Your opponent's sitting over there with like a Doom Shigenja with nothing on him, and you then have the ability to just go, oh well, that's fine. I'm just going to bow my character now, and my attack is over. I'm not going to get the ring. My Neaton Master's bowed, or my other character's bowed, and the game doesn't end on this turn because I picked that face down card instead of that face down card.
Because I have won a couple of games during the week where my opponent knew Feast or Famine was there and was smart. They attacked with like 1 skill characters to try fish it out to see where it was, and as soon as they flipped it, I was like, bonsai game. Yeah,
absolutely. I'll boost your character. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, John is saying in chat if it were participating characters only that this affected, and that's fine up to a point. I think that's perfectly fine for characters or for clans like Scorpion who are going to be poking at it with Bayushi Liars, or they're going to be buying cheap conflict characters and poking at it. But that's not an option for a whole bunch of clans like Dragon, Phoenix, like Crab, who don't have as many of those options available to them.
But at the same time,
or at least they don't have.
You have to look at it.
They don't have a deck. Yeah.
Sorry, we keep talking over each other. You have to. You have to look at it in comparison to Meditations on the Tower, which I think is clearly what the designers were trying to do. They were trying to establish effect that was a fire type effect, so it was going to be a bit similar, playing around with fate, punishing characters, but they wanted to be a little bit more powerful because it was locked into fire only, and then we'll reduce the province strength slightly to kind of balance it out. So like one of the potential suggestions was to boost it up to 5 to make it harder to break, which seems ridiculous but isn't actually crazy. So I can see why they went down this route with Feast or Famine, looking to make it extremely good. But yeah,
I would make it so that you can only put the fate on a defending character. Because then they have to defend. They have to have someone there that makes it more difficult for your opponent to actually take it. So you might have some options there, and because they're about the end of the resolution, they're only getting 1 or 2 extra bits on them. They're not getting, and now fate goes on this guy who was unbowed and ready to go, and now that guy gets to also attack and be around the next 2 turns. So you're cutting down, and you can send the person home. You can be like, route you home. Put some extra value on routing out wit.
So where do you play it? Do you play instead of Meditations though? That's my real the question here when you're trying to get this, and I totally agree that it is. There are situations where it just wins games or loses games for people. It's horrific. But how do you bring it down to a level where not doing that, but it is at least as good as Meditations? Meditations is an action that you could take every turn. You don't have to break a province.
You basically remove all the fate from one person and then put it on a defender. So at least when you break it, it strips all your fate off your guy. Now that sucks. That's really strong. But at the same time, it's not then also going, also I get this guy for 2 more turns. And if I charge the guy, super plus good.
See, I'm not sure that, actually thinking about it, I'm not sure that works either, because then I just favorable ground in my bowed guy. Whoop.
Yeah, but I mean, at least that there's counterplays and the stuff. Like when this it's breaking, it's like, well, I can't do anything. Like if I can favorable ground my guy home, when that's a good play, I'll stop breaking it. I'll spend one of my valuable holdings to not break this province. When that's a good play, it's bad juju. It is bad juju.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Other neutral card nominations. Anyone want to dive in?
Yeah, Charge. Charge is, we made a massive hullabaloo about this card when it first showed up, and it was kind of okay for a while, and I think it's going to just get more and more as the game continues. Yeah, Travis is down. Like, Policy Debate is the next one on my list for unaligned cards. Mirror Modus Fury should arguably also be on the list. Anyway, Charge. Okay, so we made a hullabaloo about this card because it seemed to represent a really huge a really huge economic boost for the turn. And it does. If you're charging in a 5-cost guy, you've basically earned yourself 4 fate for the turn, in that conflict in which he's participating. And this has only been made worse and worse and worse now. Okay, so we've now got combos with Ikoma Ujiaki, who can charge in, discard the favor, flip provinces, bring more guys in, for greater glory.
You're still scarred by that experience.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But it's like the literal end times. I mean, the other thing we see is I will charge in, like we were talking earlier, I'll charge in Hida Kasada. I will reprieve Hida Kasada. I'll Vanguard Warrior of Fate Kasada. I'll Iron Mine Hida Kasada. And that all comes out, and that all happens because you played a 1-cost fake, or you played a 1-cost conflict card. Like, I would have no problem. I would have far, far less problem with Lion, with Ujiaki and with the Kasada chain, if they actually had to pay the 5 full fate for Ujiaki or Kasada, because then they've invested their whole turn into that. Okay, that's a lot more fair. But cards like this completely break the economy of the game, and like, even going back, like the thing that FFG made or really focused on was the whole idea of Mono no Ware, and characters, fate going away, character getting play. So what they're really talking about there is they are talking about the game's economy, and there are so many cards that have been designed that fundamentally shatter that mechanic. And the thing is, like, that mechanic is it's elegant and it's fantastic, and those mechanics are so rare. Like, you see those mechanics every day in games. Not now anyway. Like, games as a space have been so explored that for basically a new kind of mechanic to come out, and for that mechanic to actually be fantastic, is so rare. That they were absolutely right to make a big thing about Mono no Ware and what it did for the game, and what the game was about, and how that changed the way the game played and flowed. But then you have cards like Feast or Famine, Urge, for Greater Glory, which fundamentally shatter that paradigm by completely going over the top of resource management, and allowing you to do ludicrous things. And Charge is a card that is just going to get more and more degenerate as the game continues. I mean, once the Phoenix pack comes out, you'll have Phoenix players charging 6/6s to play, which are then going to bring back 5-cost characters from their bin. 11 fates worth of investment for one. This is bananas. It's like this card is becoming more and more of a problem with every expansion, with every pack it releases. And because of that, much like I see with the Kitsu Spirit Roller, this card absolutely needs a cost restriction. I think this card should only be able to bring in characters that cost 3 or less. Even at that, even if it's only bringing in a character that costs 3 or less, if you compare it to other cards that cost 1, it is still doing easily. I mean, it's still doing more than enough for a 1-cost conflict card. So anyway, after that long rant about Charge and why it's so busted, the solution that I would suggest is putting a cost restriction on it. During a military conflict, choose a character with cost 3 or less in one of your provinces, put that character into play in the conflict, and that's it. That's how I would change it.
Right. Baz, nominations for neutrals?
So for me, I'm going to pad out what I've written down slightly before, but I'm going to say Assassination, Bonsai, and Court Games. And I don't really mean Assassination, but it is considered to be one of the ABCs of decks. Assassination has slowly drifted down. A lot of people are playing 2 these days. Some people are playing 1 on the basis that they don't really need Assassination, but they feel like that they should have 1 for their top 16 deck list when their opponent goes against it. Because there are certain scenarios where if you're not playing Assassination, your opponent can get more leverage out of 2-cost characters where they wouldn't normally have before. But for me, Bonsai and Court Games are 2 cards that I constantly want to take out of my decks. Just because there's 6 slots, and I would love to put another 6 cards in there instead. But I do. A lot of the time I take them out. I seriously do. But they are just so good that it is hard for me to justify to do that. I have posted deck lists before that didn't have Bonsai Court Games, and people looked at me like I was I had a third eye. Like, it's just, they're so prevalent, they're so constant in all deck lists that I feel that they kind of limit things slightly. I'm not sure what you do about that. To an extent, there's always going to be a certain number of best cards that go into the decks, but yeah, I think they just get so much work done. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, but I certainly would like more space in my decks to squeeze in a few more cards.
All right. Owen, well, what are your choices for neutrals?
I've got two, really. I've got Maya Mystic, who needs a buff. I would keep the sacrifice aspect of Maya Mystic, and I would either buff her stats, possibly make her a 2/2 for 2, which might be too good, is my only problem with that. I'm not sure it's too good, but it might be too good. Or I would tack onto her ability, sacrifice her, she's attached, discard the attachment, draw a card. And basically do something like that. Do something else with her. Make her that a little bit better, because attachments are so strong in the current meta. There's so many must-answer attachments that people are playing Maya Mystic, who's a pretty bad card. And if she was a little better, I think people would find more comfortable. I think maybe her being slightly higher stats would be good. If she's a 2-cost 2/2, people will feel, I think, a lot better about her and be like, okay, well, at least I can throw a fate on her, and I don't feel like a total fool if I see her too early. You know, I would buff her a little bit. I wouldn't try and make her effect stronger, because I think her effect is actually pretty strong. I would just make her a little bit more of a threat for her cost before you do that. You can make her a 1/2 or a 2/1, something like that, to make her a little bit more relevant. Maybe a 2/2 is too strong. My other ones, though, are, I think the generic Void provinces are too strong. I think the provinces aren't equal. I think the Void provinces are consistently, generally, some of the strongest provinces you have access to. And it made Seeker of the Void such an amazingly powerful pick. It's only that Feast or Famine is so busted that Fire went first. Otherwise, I was convinced Seeker of Void was going to be the #1 pick for people. Because Shameful Display and Pilgrimage, they're the best provinces in the game, with the exception of probably Feast or Famine. And other than that, they're just both crazy. They're both incredibly strong. And the Void provinces being so much stronger than the other ones is, I don't know if it's deliberate or not. I don't know if it's a design decision that the Void provinces are the best, but they really are. And it's pretty stark. And like the water in comparison are pretty weak.
Okay. Any other wildcard nominations we want to throw in? Or,
Oh yeah, policy debate.
All right.
But we are kind of getting to the end here. So yeah, so policy debate is a card that allows, so it's a political duel. You take a look at an opponent's hand if you win, and you take a card from it. It's tremendously powerful. It allows you to, it gives you knowledge of what your opponent is capable of doing in the conflict that you're involved in, and future conflicts for the rest of the turn potentially. And it also allows you to take the most impactful card from their hand and just discard it, put it in the bin. So it gives you quite a significant amount of, it allows you to dominate the political phase quite a bit. And so fixes for this, probably your opponent should be able to choose the character they are dueling with. Seems the fairest fix. So at the moment, this card, you will have one person, you'll have one character on 4, maybe 5 politics. Your opponent will have a character on 1 politics, and your 5 politics character will just bully that character. It should, if your opponent had the choice of basically who they put forward to debate on the subject, then that would balance the card out quite a bit more, because it would introduce a greater degree of uncertainty as to who was going to win. The only other option I could possibly think of is that the player that loses gets to set aside 1 card, and you get to take from the rest of their cards. That might work. That's going to slow the game down a bit more, though, because now you have 2 players going, well, what do I keep? What do I get rid of? And it also removes policy debate as a solution to some of the nastier conflict cards, that are in the environment. Again, like things like For Greater Glory, policy debate is a significant answer to that card. And it has other applications. So it's a very, very difficult hard card to balance, I think, because targeted discard and complete hand knowledge is an incredibly powerful package to be wrapped up into a single card. So a tweak to this would certainly help, but I'm 100% sure make a card like this fair ever, or fulfill a significant function and still be fair. So, but it's definitely a problem.
Cool. Okay, I think that wraps it up for everyone.
I think so.
Yeah.
This
cool.
has been cathartic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I will say, I think that by and large the game's in a good state. I think most of what we're talking about there is future-proofing stuff, and just being willing to take a look at certain things that maybe came off a little bit too strong or a little bit too weak. I mean, I've seen games in far worse condition after the first kind of release cycle, where the eggs, the wheels have come totally off the thing, and everything's on fire and it's all ruined, and we don't have that, so that's great.
Yeah.
all right. So, go on.
Yeah. No, it's just worth saying that the core mechanics of the game are absolutely wonderful. And I really, really enjoy playing this game. Despite, there are problem cards and stuff like that, but the game is still hugely enjoyable, hugely rewarding to play. The community is still the players are still fantastic to meet, to talk to, and to spend time with. It's games for all the complaining we've done here tonight.
Yeah,
it's still a super enjoyable game.
And I think if the listeners go through the cards that we've talked about and try put as many of them into a deck as they possibly can, then you're doing something right.
Okay, great. So if you want to argue with us in person, you can find us in Cork next weekend. Come say hi, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with probably all of us with Hatamoto titles. I assume. Just the
I'd imagine
traditional jinx.
What, and not 10-day stubbles and continuing hangovers? No.
That too. All right. So thanks for chiming in. Lots of good feedback, and we'll maybe see some people in Cork. If not, tune in 2 weeks. Bye bye.
Take care.
See you now.